Hey, good morning, guys. This is Benny Ricciardi here with rotocurve.com. I'm here to walk you through some of the hitter options that we've gone through today for for Friday, July 3rd. Hope you guys are all having a safe holiday weekend and, make sure to be smart and enjoy yourselves. The first guy I want to talk about today is Kyle Kendrick. Kendrick is going up against that Arizona Diamondbacks team. Kendrick has allowed basically everybody's hit him pretty well. He's allowed a 282 batting average with 14 home runs and 53 innings to right-handed bats this year. He's allowed a 291 batting average with the 166 whip to left-handed bats this year. So whoever you want to take in this game for Arizona, everybody has a pretty solid matchup. The top targets, the guys who I think I'm going to be trying to fit in my lineup again, are Paul Goldschmidt, who has a 343 batting average with 15 home runs and 216 at-bats. Yasmani Tomas is hitting 325 so far this year against right-handed pitching. And the last guy is A.J. Pollock, who has a 287 batting average with 8 home runs and 230 at-bats, which I actually think is 9 home runs now because he hit another one last night. Next guy I want to talk about is Michael Lorenzen from the Cincinnati Reds. He's allowed a 307 batting average with 5 home runs and 21 innings so far this year to left-handed bats. So there's a couple guys in that Milwaukee Brewers team that I think you might want to look at targeting. The first guy is Adam Lind. Lind is hitting 307 with 12 home runs and 218 at-bats. He's going to be in a cleanup spot for them. He's been hitting pretty well. He's been flashing his power. He's been getting some hits, getting on base. So I definitely think Lind is somebody that you want to look at. His price has come up all over the place. He's very expensive on FanDuel. I think he might be like the 5th or 6th most expensive first baseman over there. And he's not cheap over on DraftKings either right now. He's about a mid-priced first baseman option over on Aces. There's still a bunch of guys above him, but there's, not too many guys below him that have the same kind of upside that he has. So I definitely think he's somebody that you want to look at. The other two guys on that Milwaukee team are Gerardo Parra. Parra's hitting 309 right now against right-handed pitching, so he'll probably be in the leadoff spot for Milwaukee today. Has a lot of extra base hits, getting a lot of doubles, has a little bit of home run power, and on top of that order, he's been scoring a lot of runs lately. His price is still cheap in a lot of spots. I think he's only $2,600 over on FanDuel. He's in the low 3s over on DraftKings as well. I'm not sure. I think he's about 45 or 46 on Aces. That's where he was yesterday. I didn't look at his price over there today. But he's definitely somebody I think that you should, try to fit into your salaries to give you a little bit of savings and also make sure you keep some of that upside. The cheap option that you can look at as well is Scooter Gennett. He is great against right-handed pitching. And as of now, he's been hitting in the 2-hole. So if they have him hitting behind Parra on top of that order and in front of guys like Ryan Braun and Lucroy and obviously a guy like Adam Lind, who we just discussed, I definitely think that he's somebody else that could be in play. If you can find him on a site where he's really, really cheap and he is hitting in that 2-hole, he's definitely somebody that you want to try to squeeze into your rosters. The next pitcher who I think we should be targeting against today is John Danks. Danks has allowed a 321 batting average with 12 home runs and 60 innings to right-handed bats this year. Last year, he allowed them to hit 275 against them with 22 home runs and 140 innings. So there's definitely something to the fact that Danks is struggling to get out right-handed bats, especially right-handed bats that have some power. So with that being said, the two guys on Baltimore I think we should be looking at are Adam Jones. Despite the fact that Jones hasn't had a great season, he is somebody who mashes left-handed pitching, and he's been doing it again this year. He's got a 367 batting average right now, only 3 home runs, but only 3 home runs and 49 at-bats. So that's 1 every 16 at-bats, which is not a bad average for him. The other guy I think we should be using is Manny Machado. Ever since they moved him up to the leadoff spot, this guy's been on fire. Against left-handed pitching so far this year, he's hitting 333 with 3 home runs and 66 at-bats. So, again, not a high home run to at-bat average, but both of these guys are guys who have been mashing left-handed pitching. They're going to be on top of that order, and Baltimore is expected to put up some runs in a good hitter's park against John Danks today. So both of those guys are in play. There's probably a few other guys in that Baltimore order. Definitely any of the right-handed bats you want to, keep an eye on to see if there's a couple cheap options, like maybe like a Delman Young. Who else they got? Like a guy like a Steve Fiers. If you see some of those guys in the lineup, they could be some good cost savers. They're definitely some good guys to throw in with Jones and Machado if you want to stack up the Orioles and look for a big game out of them. Next guy I want to talk about is Chase Anderson. Chase Anderson goes up against Colorado. He actually has a little bit of a reverse splits going on. 271 batting average, 7 home runs, and 49 innings pitched this year. Last year, he was 302 with 9 home runs and 62 innings pitched against right-handed batters. So the two big right-handed batters that you always want to target when you're talking about Colorado are shortstop Troy Tulowitzki. He's hitting 290 this year, only 5 home runs and 200 at-bats against right-handed pitching. He's usually a guy that we'd rather target against lefties. But again, I mean, with a 290 average and a little bit of pop at the shortstop position, you know, he's still somebody that you can roll out there against right-handers if you get a weak righty on the mound like Anderson is. The guy who's been on fire, though, has been Nolan Arenado. He has a 288 batting average with 22 home runs and 233 at-bats so far this year. Lately, he's had a couple multi-homer games. He has just been absolutely seeing the ball well and crushing it. So he does hit right-handed pitching well. Chase Anderson does struggle with right-handed batters despite being a righty. So I definitely think that Arenado and Tulo are two guys you can roll out there. Now, neither one of these guys is cheap. Neither one of these guys is going to be somebody who I think you should be targeting if you're trying to fit in a, high-priced pitcher like maybe a Clayton Kershaw today. But I do think both of these guys have some upside. And since it is a righty-righty matchup, I think you're going to get them both lower owned because people tend to shy away from those matchups when they see them. There's a couple other guys I want to mention real quick. Mikey Fiers is pitching from Milwaukee today. He really struggles with left-handed bats, giving up a 289 average with 6 home runs and 40 innings pitched and a whip of 1.56. So one guy who tends to fly under the radar, even though he's one of the best first basemen in the league, is Joey Votto. Votto's hitting 281 against right-handed pitching with 12 home runs and 192 at-bats. Now, the thing about Fiers is he is a high strikeout guy, and he can get a lot of guys out, but he does make a lot of mistakes. He's very erratic. He doesn't have great control. And when he makes a mistake in the middle of the plate, he gets hit pretty hard because he throws the ball pretty hard. So Votto's one of those guys that is going to be patient, is going to make him throw him strikes. And when he does throw a strike, if he misses, Votto's the kind of guy that can make him pay for it. So there aren't a lot of bats I want to target against. Some people are going to be talking about a guy like Billy Hamilton today. But remember, Hamilton's a high strikeout guy going up against a high strikeout pitcher. So even though he has the right splits matchup, being a lefty going up against a righty and Fiers, it still doesn't really make a lot of sense to me for that to be one of the guys that you really try to target. Jay Bruce is the same way. He's got that home run upside, especially against right-handed pitching. Again, Fiers struggles against lefties, but Bruce is also a high strikeout guy. So you don't want to be rolling out high strikeout guys against a high strikeout pitcher, especially if you're playing on an efficiency site, something like a FanDuel where they take away for outs, or even something like a Fantasy Aces where they take away for strikeouts. You're going to have, you might have some positives, but if the guy has 3 or 4 strikeouts, that's a lot of points that you're going to be losing and you're going to need to make up. Another guy that I think you can target against today is Jeremy Guthrie. Obviously, anytime Guthrie's on the mound going up against a lefty, you want to look at, left-handed bats to take. He's allowed lefties to hit 339 with 10 home runs and 44 innings pitched. The problem is Minnesota doesn't have a ton of lefties. There's really only 2 guys that I think you can even mention. The first guy is Joe Mauer. If he still has catcher eligibility on whatever site you're playing on, by all means, he's a good option at catcher today. Catcher's a wasteland. It's a really tough spot today. So if you can find Mauer as a catcher on whatever site you're playing, I definitely think he's in play as a lefty going up against Guthrie. The guy who I think I will be using, though, and is pretty cheap on basically whatever site you're playing, is Eddie Rosario. Rosario is a rookie left-handed batter. He either bats in the 2-hole or the 5-hole lately for that Minnesota offense. He's got a 275 batting average, has a little bit of pop, knocked out a couple home runs. But again, he's either going to be hitting 2nd or 5th in that order, and he's a left-handed bat going up against Guthrie, who completely struggles with left-handed bats. So Rosario is very cheap. I think he's like 4,000 or 4,250 over on Fantasy Aces. So he's one of those cheap guys I think you should be using for some salary saving today in order to fit in a stud. Over on DraftKings, he's a little more expensive, but he's still pretty cheap relative to where he's going to be hitting in the order and the matchup that he has today. So while there aren't a lot of left-handed bats in that Minnesota order, I do think that you can look at some of the ones that are in there. Maybe even some of the platoon guys who happen to get in today if they're batting in a decent spot in the order. Like we said, Guthrie against left-handed bats is something that we've always been targeting. So you want to try to get as many left-handed bats in against him as possible. Next guy I want to talk about is Justin Masterson. Masterson's another guy, just like Guthrie, struggles throughout his career with left-handed bats. And Houston's another one of those teams that just really doesn't have a lot of left-handed bats to go after him with. The only two guys that you can really think of are, if you're looking for a high upside play, a guy like Luis Valbuena. Valbuena is basically a all or nothing kind of guy. He either winds up hitting you a home run or he strikes out a whole bunch of times and gets you a 0 or a negative number. There's really no in between with him. So I don't think he's someone you want to look at in your cash games. But for a tournament, I definitely think he has some upside at a cheap price. He's a little bit expensive over on DraftKings. I didn't look at his price all over today, but unless you're getting a big discount on this guy, I really wouldn't take it. It's a very volatile, very risky, very high upside play because he can hit the home run, but I just don't think it's going to be worth it unless you get a drastic discount. There's a lot of good third basemen today. Guys like Josh Donaldson, guys like Machado, guys like Arenado. They're all in good spots. So I don't think third base is a place that you want to be punting today because one, if not more, of those three guys are probably going to go off tonight. And if you have a bad performance out of your third baseman, you're going to be left too far behind the 8-ball with too much room to make up in order to get up there with your rosters. Last guy I want to mention is Anibal Sanchez. Sanchez against right-handed bats this year has allowed a 277 batting average with 10 home runs and 48 innings pitched. He's up in Toronto. No, actually, I'm sorry. That game is in Detroit, but he's facing Toronto. Toronto has a ton of right-handed bats. So for Anibal Sanchez to be struggling with right-handed bats and home run hitters, it's really not going to work out that well for him. You got guys like Donaldson, Joey Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, even down to the second-tier hitters, guys like Pilar and Colabello and Martin and Navarro. And even the speed guys like Travis had a big game yesterday. I think he had 3 or 4 hits. Jose Reyes has been playing pretty well. So that Toronto order is pretty ridiculous. So you don't want to be messing around too much going up against taking pitchers against them. So I definitely don't think that Sanchez is somebody in play. And after I looked at his numbers and saw how bad he's been struggling with right-handed bats, I actually even think you could put some of those Toronto bats in play. I don't think they'll be highly owned, so they could be a sneaky stack. Hey, anytime you can get the highest scoring offense in the league at lower ownership, it's definitely something you should consider. So those are the guys that we think you should be targeting against today and some of the bats that we think you should be using against them. Obviously, when lineups come out later, you might find a few more guys in good spots. But for now, I'm going to go enjoy my holiday weekend. As you guys can see, I'm down at the Jersey Shore right now. That's why I have a different background behind me. So basically, I'm going to be signing off right now. Stay classy, DFS, and I'll see you on the beach.